Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sattology means science of truth, study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which is science of fake or study of fake, lie, or imagination. Today I have a very, very special guest, and we are going to cover, he's come after a long time, and we are going to cover the war and the global, what's going happening in the global scene. Abhijit, very welcome.
Thank you.
So, Abhijit, one question I have is, so what do you think, according to you, how is India assessing it? Because now we are seeing that Indian Foreign Affairs, Indian Finance Minister, they came to US and they gave very strong rebuttal to the US on various issues, including human rights and Russian buying gas from Russia. So, what do you think is the next step from the Americans? Because now they think that India is an ally and may not be an ally. So many people have come. What is your assessment?
Look, I think one of the issues with our foreign ministry is they tend to consider glib remarks with actual action on the ground, right? So all these glib remarks are fine. My issue is, what are you actually changing on the ground to, strengthen your situation or anything? And the answer is nothing. Crisis after crisis comes to give you an opportunity to reform the economy, go ahead. Uh, we never take it. So this is one set of things. What's happening in America is something completely different. This thing about India not being an ally and things. See, there's two sections of the Democratic Party. One is very tuned into foreign policy debates. They understand that there's a certain reciprocity. If you're not willing to support a democracy like India against a country like Pakistan, which is either a dictatorship or a quasi-dictatorship where the army controls everything, which incidentally did to India exactly what Russia did to Ukraine, then India is not really going to be supporting you with regards to Russia. On the other hand, you have all these sort of grandstanding types within the US administration who will basically put out loose stock. And the problem right now is that this is a president who doesn't control his own administration, and it's a vice president who's hated by the entire administration. So all the silos are working at cross purposes with each other. There's nothing anyone can do about it. That's an internal American problem that has to be sorted out.
See, a lot of questions were asked about the Indian defense procurement from Russia, and we all know the CIPRI report came out. That India is the third largest importer of weapons in last 2 years, or last year maybe. So the question is that the Indians have openly said, like Rajnath Singh openly said, that your weapons are very expensive for us to buy, and also they don't come with the technology of transfer. Do you think that Americans will ever transfer technology to India for anything, for any weapon, according to?
So see, this is blaming somebody else for our own faults. How did South Korea get all this technology? How did Japan get all this technology? How did Turkey get all this technology? How did Singapore get the technology it has? So we have failed to absorb technology because, see, one part of technology is the transfer of the diagrams and things. The other is you create the economic case for it. When you buy in drips and sobs, there is no economics on earth that will let you indigenize an engine for just 126 aircraft. You'll need to build several hundred, 300-400 aircraft in order to be able to indigenize even about 40 to 50% of the parts of that aircraft, right? You'll need a much bigger market for engines to be able to indigenize them. So this is on the one hand that we don't create the economics for it. It's like saying, oh, I don't have money to buy a Rolls Royce, but shame on you for not selling me the Rolls Royce at the price of a Honda Accord. The second part of this is, what Rajnath said about buying Russian weapons, about European weapons being too expensive. Well, European weapons are expensive because they actually do the job. As we can see in Ukraine, Russian weapons really aren't doing their job. So you want to buy essentially third-rate weapons, which are still pretty expensive, which are probably not going to do their job and going to be shot down like flies. Congratulations to you. See, even in Balakot, We didn't use the Sukhoi, which was meant to be the deep strike aircraft. We used the Mirage 2000 instead. Why? Because they were the only ones that actually worked. And they're much more, they were much more, the upgrade of a single Mirage 2000 cost more than a brand new Sukhoi 30 did. So this is the thing. Either you invest in quality or you invest in junk. It's entirely up to you.
So India is like building Tejas Mk2 program, Mk1A, which is very well received by the Indian IAF. But again, just the 83. Now, if you look at the US fleet, is standardized around F-16, F-15EX, and F-35 now. F-35 is gradually replacing F-16. But India has like the supermarket of aircrafts in the Air Force. And when we talk about standardization, you and I, we both know, I know in business, it's very important to keep the inventory of one type easier to manage actually. So do you think that that is also a consideration in the Indian mind going forward, because now they have learned it, because it is too expensive for the Air Force to manage also?
Look, they haven't learned squat, because they've literally done diddly squat from all of this. Because remember, they're not even planning to deploy the Tejas against China or Pakistan. They're planning on deploying it against Sri Lanka, because they know it's not going to perform terribly well. Maybe the ASA will compensate somewhat, but again, they're not going to deploy it against Pakistan. So, this was a problem that could have been rectified if this plane had come earlier. And if you had placed orders for about 400-500 of it, forced the Air Force to commit to it, then the Air Force would have forced the DRDO to actually produce a proper plane rather than the sort of socialist employment scheme for the unemployable that the DRDO is at the moment. That hasn't happened. Again, the Air Force wants Rafale, they want AMCA, they want another single engine fighter. The Navy wants yet another aircraft, this thing for its fleet. And you want to buy some future replacement aircraft as well. So even now, as we speak, there are 5 different fighters in the competition, in the running for the Indian Air Force at the moment.
There's a question from one of your fans has come in now, Amanda. She's asking that Indian Foreign Minister raised a question on the actual question is that on the human rights situation in the US, that we are observing it. And she's an India lover, so she's saying, she's Indophile, she's saying that that we raise a lot of human rights questions on India, but they all proved to be wrong. But will India take up the issues of Native Americans in the US? She's a mixed parentage, Native American and the British.
Okay. Well, no. India simply won't, because I don't think India has the depth or the bandwidth to even understand what is happening. If you look, Indian diplomats they don't do any ground research. We've got too small. The Indian diplomatic service is smaller than the Singapore diplomatic service. So they simply don't have the bandwidth to cover anything. They don't have the depth of knowledge to get into anything. And chances are, unless some famous Indian pop historian brings up something about American Indians, which they can use rhetorically. At best, it will be used rhetorically, nothing more. If at all that, and I'm quite convinced, knowing the caliber of our diplomats, not even that.
I mean, there is a very and a question apart. There's a big excitement in Native American community that there is some country like India can speak for their rights, because many of them, they attend Indian, like they go to India regularly and they attend many conferences over there. So they think that India can understand their pains more than anyone else. Now, second question, which has also come from Sean. Sean is asking that, Abhijit, can we also create an alliance of democracies around the world which are based on natives? Sorry, I'm reading from this screen, so I have to look at it.
Well, look, democracy is a very convenient term, because India has been a democracy for the last 70 years, and that never prevented America from screwing us over in the past. It also did prevent India from aligning with Russia precisely to stop, well, the USSR uh, uh, as a lever against China, right? So there are all these issues which exist. So first of all, I don't think the sort of democratic peace works. Democracies don't really end up bombing each other, more or less. But does the Golden Arches theory transfer into, so basically the Golden Arches theory is that if you're a democracy, you'll probably have a McDonald's, the Golden Arches, and countries that have Golden Arches don't go to war with each other. That's been busted with several times now. But what happens is there is definitely no Golden Arches alliance theory, that just because you have a McDonald's, you have to be aligned with another country that has a McDonald's, which is to say a democracy, basically. So no, democracies, no. Should indigenous people and natives come together? Yes, they should. The question is, how do you do that? Because remember, intersectionality will fundamentally exclude indigenous rights to a large extent. For example, how much talk you see a lot about Islamophobia. Isn't it amazing that there's an Islamophobia bill in the US Congress? There is a Holocaust museum in Washington, D.C., but where is the museum to the Native American genocide in D.C.? Where is the Native American Holocaust denial punishment bill? Where is the focus on the problems of indigenous communities? There isn't. Even in Canada, you look at the discourse, it's not about the First Nations. It's thrown in here and there, but most of the grandstanding is again about Islam. The issue here is that the First Nations in America will never provide the kind of hefty vote bank that Muslims can, or sections of the Black community can, or Hispanics can, and things like that. So as long as they are not a coherent vote bank, there is no negotiation in the intersectional alliance. So again, while I agree with you, there should be a democratic native alliance, the issue always is you're let down by the lack of cohesion and the numbers.
No, you raised very pertinent points. I think a deep insight into that. There is no such thing. I've been to all the museums in DC. There's no such thing. One question also comes in that my very good friend Manuel is asking, Manuel Aguirre. He's a Mexican American, and he's asking that Mexico is a third world country with the biggest trade with the US of more than $535 billion last year. Canada, on the other hand, is a northern neighbor, which is a first world country with a trade of just $200 billion between US and Canada. Then why is Mexico a third world country and why Canada is a first world country, and both are on the two sides of USA?
Well, first is a question of population. Mexico is much more populous than Canada. The second is the issue of, serial malgovernance. Remember, I mean, Mexico used to be a superpower at one point of time. It wasn't America that was the most powerful country in, it wasn't the US. It was Mexico and Brazil that were the big superpowers of North and South America, respectively. Of course, Mexico lost almost more than half its land to America, from California to Texas, to everything. But you look at how Mexican leaders went on letting down their own people. At some point, you have to introspect, right? I mean, Benito Juarez, great guy, but what's the point if you're going to play demagogue? And his most famous statement is that Mexico's tragedy is it's so far from God and so close to America. This is the line that Bangladesh and Pakistan play against India. When you have a big neighbor, it's very easy to blame them. Not without reason. I'm not saying that America was blameless in all of this, but where is the distribution of wealth? Where is the investment in people? Where is the smart investment in people? It doesn't happen. So, there is something to introspect and look within. a whole load of Mexican history is about missed opportunities and bad governance, Santa Anna or Emperor Maximilian and all those people. But look, it's just lost opportunity after lost opportunity, bad governance, bad governance, bad governance. These things count. And technically, I mean, why should a similar trajectory, British and French coming and dispossessing Native Americans in Canada, the Spanish coming and dispossessing the Maya and the Aztecs, all of them in Mexico. Theoretically, it should have been a similar trajectory. It isn't. It isn't for a very good reason. People forget that, say, Bolivia had the second highest per capita income in the world at one point of time, except it was all concentrated in a small set of hands. So the question is, how do you invest in your people and make yourself a first world country?
I think that today most of the questions are coming from public policy guys, public policy students. And one last question, I think you have to go also, but I'll ask one question. Is that most of the Americans' enemies, America's enemies, America, that means I mean USA's enemies, are getting smaller in size. Cuba, Venezuela, and partly now the drug dealers now in the Mexico, they're getting smaller in size. They're not like the earlier used to be directly USSR, and they don't want to fight with Russia directly. So it's
Well,
always
I mean,
happening.
Russia is a big enemy. It's the biggest enemy that America will ever face. China is a big enemy, not an enemy, it's an adversary. Uh, Russia is now actively an enemy. So let's see. See, this is what I thought. This was Francis Fukuyama's end of history theory. But boy, like, you know, when you write something like this is the end of history, you're just setting yourself up for failure, right? I mean, I'm guilty of being too deterministic, but that was like deterministic taken to the next level. No, I think the world is going to get more chaotic because, like all great democracies, you know, isn't it curious? The last question was from Mexico, and there's that very important line from Will Durant, which is quoted in Apocalypto, which is about, you know, the Maya phase, well, the late Maya phase. Which is what a great civilization doesn't destroy itself from without till it's destroyed itself from within. That's what happened across the board. It happened to Rome, it happened to India, it happened to most of these countries. And America is in that process of self-destruction, this leftist capture of academia and this going into extraordinary levels of polarization. You're going to see a process that's probably worse than the USSR, the breakup of the USSR and things like that. So, and I've always maintained China would not be the country that would destroy America. America would destroy itself first. So that's invariably what I see happening right now.
Now, one question from Sandra Wong, host of the day. And Sandra is asking, she's from Taiwan. You know that she serves in the Taiwanese military also. She's an American Marine, but goes there. Now, Sandra is asking that Taiwan is so small as compared to China. And so there is no strategic depth over there. So what, in your opinion, can stop Chinese aggression towards Taiwan?
Look, Taiwan has the Taiwan Straits. That's all the strategic depth you need. You know, this is like the Japanese holding off the armies of Kublai Khan, the Mongols. This is like the Japanese holding off several Chinese invasions that were not Mongol. This is like Britain holding off several French invasions, holding off Napoleon, holding off Hitler. Never undersell yourselves. There's a lot. Taiwan may be small, but its strategic depth is the ocean between. There's a lot, maybe those frontier islands. What are the two frontier islands? I forget now. Those two tiny things which are very close to the Chinese mainland. Maybe you lose them. But Taiwan, I don't see it in any inherent threat of falling at all. I think you'll make mincemeat of the Chinese military much, much more effectively than, look, Ukraine is going to lose. Boris Johnson was in Delhi. He said, he essentially, unusually honest. He said, Yeah, we're going to cause huge amount of destruction to the Russian army, but the Russians are going to take a year, but they're going to win. His exact words in Delhi. Not reported, of course, because it doesn't suit the narrative. Taiwan is going to win. Okay, Taiwan will win. And it'll do it much, much more effectively with far less destruction than Ukraine.
Her follow-up question:
Look, India will never help Taiwan. Look, the one thing you never count more on the Chinese seeing sense and backing off than on India helping you. The one thing that never fails to disappoint is India.
Thank you all for watching, and do comment on the video. Let us know your feedback. Namaste.
Ta-ta, bye.